Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel, Coffee Tea Paper. My name's Louise and I'm here with you today to look at another book that I would consider journaling adjacent. This is of particular interest because I myself like to include in my travel journals some very not amazing, very simplistic urban sketching style illustrations when I can, when I have the time, but that's something that brings me great pleasure when I'm traveling. And it's also something that I would really like to improve in. Just as a quick background, I actually studied town planning at university and then went on to do postgraduate in urban design, and so this is an area that brings me great joy, is the urban landscape and the urban form. Today's book is by Felix Scheinberger, who you may guess is German, and it is called Urban Watercolour Sketching, a guide to drawing, painting, and storytelling in colour. And I particularly liked this book when I read that little blurb on the bottom about storytelling. Felix has an incredibly distinctive style, and this is what I would call an aspirational book for me, an inspirational book for me. I can't envisage myself ever creating anything along the lines that he does, but it's certainly inspiring for his use of color and his really vibrant line work. That's the best I can describe it, but we'll start having a look at it in a minute. But I'll just read to you a bit about Felix first. He's an illustrator and an author from Berlin in Germany, and he stands out thanks to his lively pieces of art and his teaching methods. He often focuses on urban scenes and characterful figures. He has published numerous books on illustration, urban sketching, and drawing, and is currently a professor at the Munster School of Design, where he teaches illustration. He's got quite a big presence online. He has a YouTube channel, he has Instagram, he does courses on Domestika. You can buy his artwork from, I want to say, Big Cartel. His pieces, oh look, and he's done the illustrations for many children's books as well. So if you've read some children's books recently, you may recognize some of his distinctive artwork as well. So he's incredibly, I'm going to say, prolific as well. You can see just with this example on the very first end page, this is Tel Aviv. I mean, this his writing's quite scrawly and messy. Tel Aviv, June 2006, and he's really just given the barest impression of these buildings with this very prominent palm tree in the front, and he's literally just splashed on some very basic blobs of color, but it's still incredibly evocative, really. This is one of his characterful figures just here. His style is really quite distinctive. It's a little bit naive or childish, a little bit Pablo Picasso. It's just, yeah, it's fascinating. I love it. Do I want to repeat it? I don't think I could. But I really enjoy this book in particular, and I enjoy looking at his works. Another artist on YouTube who sort of reminds me a bit of Felix's style, but it's somewhat toned down, I guess, in its exaggeration, is Toby Sketchloose, who's another urban sketching artist. I'll try and remember to leave links if you're interested in checking out all these people and pages that I'm mentioning. So his content here, table of contents here, is really interesting reading in itself. It gives you an idea of just how fascinating this book could be. So the name of the chapters don't really give too much away in some cases. Watercolours, in or out, a painting for the emperor, gum arabic, where the watercolours grow, pigments, the stuff that dreams are made of. And then he talks about different colours, red and purple of bugs and snails, green of plants and poison. Then the next kind of sections, I guess, are first attempts, excursion and colour theory, your own style, basics and tools, out and about, tips and tricks. And if we just pick a few sort of random things here, he's got stuff like pimping watercolors, making colors pop, air, fog, smoke. What is beauty anyway? The wash. The paint does as it pleases. So just reading that table of contents is fascinating in itself. Here you can see a couple of pages from his art journals. This is his take on watercolor. He said that, it's often perceived as something that's old-fashioned, an old-fashioned sort of medium. I think that's changed. I really have. I mean, I can't remember when I got this book. I've had it for a long time. Oh yeah, so look, it was first published, I think, in 2011. So that's 14 years ago. And I think there's been a big upsurgence in different, more looser watercolors and using watercolors as brush lettering. And I think as YouTube has gotten stronger and stronger, and Instagram, and of course we all had that period where we were stuck at home and discovered new hobbies, I really think watercolor has had much more of a resurgence than perhaps it was having when he was initially writing this book. You can have a look while I'm flicking through, but just here with the colors and the illustrations. I mean, I love these pigeons. And he's actually done these on, I don't know if he's done this on some magazine pages or some book pages. I love his stuff. His style kind of reminds me a little bit of Quentin Blake, who used to do all the illustrations for Roald Dahl's book, but kind of a bit almost next level. I don't know if Samantha Dion Baker was influenced by him at all, but there's certainly some of that in her work as well, I feel. He's really giving a fun, super fun, and maybe a little bit different overview of quite standard watercolor techniques here, using some really fun illustrations in order to demonstrate that. I mean, you can just spend hours looking through this book, even without reading anything of it. It's quite an involved read. There's a lot of information to absorb. His people are just so quirky. I mean, you kind of look at his people and he's got a whole style, and you look at this illustration of the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, and it's it's a work of art. I mean, literally and figuratively. He talks about the color wheel, which I think it's always worth revisiting the color wheel. If you're struggling to put together colors in your journal, or if you're doing a happy mail or anything, or even just an outfit, putting an outfit together, by using the color wheel, you can really make some nice color choices. And look at this, he's done his own version of the Tintin book Destination Moon, one of my most favorite series growing up. So his people are really quite interesting, and I think that's what gives his art a very distinctive look, and his use of lines and lots of messy lines, and yeah, they're quite, everything looks like it's been done super quickly without thinking about it or overthinking about it too much. But he just does create beautiful, beautiful imagery. I like this page because he suggests that if you're planning a painting and you're thinking about color, if you prepare in advance these like some color strips, you can determine what is going to work on your painting. And then you have your color harmonies, and he even suggests that if you make these color harmonies in advance, it makes it a lot easier when it comes to, perhaps if you are doing urban sketching and you've got to apply the color in situ as well. It tends to take me a long time to do my pictures. I tend to do a sketch and then leave it and then come back over it and then leave it and then put some ink on it and then leave it, and then I will add the color after that, which is why my travel journals tend to only feature a few and not some on every page. This is interesting. He says one of the best times for creative thinking is when you're still half asleep in the morning. If you're not quite there yet, you're less likely to get in the way of your creativity. So keep pencils and paper next to your bed. Now, I don't know about you, but I think practically every artist, creative thinker, designer, anybody in that kind of space, they all tend to say about keeping a notebook or a journal or some paper or something next to you when you're in your bed. I tend to have random ideas as well, often at 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't write them down on pieces of paper though. I tend to just grab my iPad and put a note in notes or pages, which is probably not great with the screen, but the screen tends to have the opposite effect on me, and I can be a few minutes into a video and I'm pretty much out like a light. Whereas often if I read a book, I get so involved and invested in the book, I just I can't stop turning the pages. This is funny. His opinion on watercolor pencils. He actually says that there is definitely a place for them. He says give your watercolor pencils to your little sister is a widespread but unkind opinion among artists and illustrators. But they are useful when firstly you don't have any other materials to hand. But I tend to think a bit like photography, where the rule of thumb is the best camera you have is the one in your hand at the time when whatever it is happening that you want to capture. I tend to think with art supplies that is the case as well. Whatever you have to hand when you are feeling creative is what you should be using, rather than you can quickly lose your urge to create or make art if you think, oh, first of all, I need to get this, or I need to get that, or oh, I need proper paintbrushes, or oh, I need proper paints, or oh, the paper's not good enough. It's, I think, better just to give in to that urge to create with whatever you have at hand. Don't forget, he is a university lecturer, so this book is quite detailed. I can totally see him presenting this to his students who are at university to learn to become illustrators for a living, not just for someone like myself who wants to put some interesting and perhaps a little bit more realistic looking sketches in their travel journal. So I'm just flicking through, talking about paintbrushes. See, he's got a lot of brushes here that he talks about. And down the bottom here is some interesting things because he has the same color swatched on all different papers. So this is ultramarine blue on Arches paper, and this is Hanamula. And down the bottom here, he's got real papyrus, Sholahama, Fabriano, handmade watercolor paper, and I guess it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, they all look okay, but I imagine they they have a different texture and a different result, and choosing that probably partly comes down to preference, but also I guess it depends too if you're going to sell your artwork or if you're producing artwork for commercial purposes. If you're an illustrator and it's going to be reproduced in a book, for example, which is, his background, is paper becomes really, really important. So he does talk about what paper preparation as well. Here he does unpack my bag with me, but wow, this one was painted with schnapps, not water, because he says if it's really cold, if it's below freezing, your water for your watercolors can freeze and become unworkable. So if you use alcohol, so in this case he's used schnapps, but you could use vodka or gin or something like that. Yeah, that's a really interesting a really interesting point. Changing perspective, painting water, air, fog, smoke, smog and atmosphere. What is beauty anyway? So that's quite interesting because yeah, he talks about rather than always choosing the most obvious building, maybe if you paint your local supermarket, the one you go to probably a few times a week, it might be more relevant going down the track. And then it gets a bit into composition and design, smudges and spots, and a lot of his work is quite organic and messy and rough looking, but that's really gives it that vibrancy, which is amazing. And it's a little bit hard for someone like myself who I tend to lean a bit in towards the wanting everything to be right or be perfect, and that's something that I really try to just not fall into that trap. So that's quite a good reminder. Negative space. So yeah, a lot of these are quite basic sort of design principles. If you've ever done any sort of design or any sort of art course or creative course or anything like that, a lot of these principles are stuff that comes up over and over and over. I love it when he has just some pictures from his journal. Working with coloured paper, special effects, lettering and writing, and yeah, and then of course he gets into about selling your artwork. Anyway, so I just wanted to share this book because I absolutely love it. I love his incredibly distinctive style, and something that I could never see myself actually imitating, because I think I get a bit too uptight with my lines and things. I really admire his work, and I think he has a lot of very interesting information in this book if you really want to dive deep into urban sketching, and for including in your journals or just as a new hobby, any of those sorts of things. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And if you liked this flip through this book, I have a number of others which are journaling or journaling adjacent books on my channel. It's a bit of a series. It's a series that I will continue to add on to as and when I find books that I enjoy and I would like to share with you as well. So if you're interested in that, then please consider subscribing. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and I always love to read your comments. Is this a book that you would be interested in getting, or maybe just borrowing from the library sort of book, or you've seen enough, it's not really for you? Any more town planner, urban designers out there? I mean, I did morph into a cartographer and statistician. It's been a ride. Anyway, I'm going to say until the next video, bye.